Story number 1. When I started my career, I worked in a nursing facility for 2 years before switching over to become a hospice nurse. If you're a patient with less than 6 months to live, you can choose hospice. My job is to ensure you're not experiencing pain. I would come to your house and teach your family how to take care of you and administer your medication. When I first started my job as a home hospice nurse, I worked the night shift. For 8 years, I had never encountered anything scary or paranormal, except for one night I got a call at 11 p.m. that an 84-year-old patient had died at home. She was a lady with a brain tumor. I didn't know this patient as I was just the nurse covering for the night, so I hadn't read much about her. When I arrived, the grandson, Jacob, came and opened the door. Jacob was the one who called me since he lived with his grandparents. Jacob walked me down the hallway to a door that was closed. I already knew the name of the deceased, but to make sure I had the right patient, I asked Jacob what his grandma's name was. Jacob told me that his grandma's name was Wanda. Jacob then returned to the sofa in the living room. I slowly opened the door to the bedroom and noticed it was kind of cold because the 2 windows were open. This is a Catholic family, so some of them believe that when someone dies, you have to open the windows for the soul to go. I looked and saw 2 heads in the bed. One was an elderly man, and the other was an elderly woman. It was sad to see the husband holding her hand in bed while she was already dead. When he saw me come in, he got up and sat on the chair by the bed. I said hello to him, but he just kind of smiled and looked down. I assessed Wanda and confirmed that she had died. She wasn't breathing and had no heartbeat. On the paperwork, it said that Wanda's husband's name was William. I told William that I was very sorry, and he just nodded his head. I knew that William had some kind of dementia and forgetfulness, so it would be the grandson Jacob who had to sign some papers. I walked out into the hallway and slowly closed the door. When I got to the living room, Jacob was sitting there with another elderly man. I said hello to the elderly man sitting by Jacob, and Jacob said to me, "This is Wanda's husband, William. Grandpa, this is the nurse. She came while you were in the bathroom." I was so shocked. William said hello to me. I started having Jacob sign some papers. It was a good thing they had already chosen a funeral home. I asked if Jacob wanted me to call the funeral home for them, or if he could call them when he and his grandpa were ready. Jacob said he wanted me to call the funeral home. I made the call, and they said they would be on their way to pick her up in about 20 minutes. After that, William said he wanted to see her one more time before they came to get her for the morgue. Jacob helped William up, and he slowly walked him towards the bedroom. The eye was tagging along, and once we got into the bedroom, no one else was in there but Wanda. She was sitting up in the bed and blinking at us with her wide, startled eyes, all alone. I was so creeped out that I asked if Jacob and his grandpa would be okay being by themselves, and he said they would be. He thanked me. After that, I left and went back to my car. I looked over the paperwork again, and it said that Wanda was a widow and had remarried William. I looked at the nurse's notes from a few weeks ago. The nurse who came to care for Wanda had written that Wanda often mentioned her late husband Noah, who had passed away years ago during her hallucination episodes. I got scared and drove off. That was my only scary encounter with the unknown. Story number 2. One of the saddest things that parents can go through is when their small child is dying from a rare blood vessel disease. The disease is called vasculitis. It's a condition that causes inadequate blood flow to the baby. The baby in this story was born with the disease, and the doctor told the parents that the baby wouldn't live long. The parents named their child Hannah. They always kept Hannah in a little bassinet with a small doll. And usually the nurses and doctors don't allow any dolls or teddy bears in the crib, but for Hannah, they made an exception. The parents were very loving. Before they had Hannah, they had decorated a room for her, and her crib was very nicely arranged. After a few months, Hannah wasn't doing well. The parents asked the hospital if they could take her home to her room. The parents knew that if they took the baby home, she was going to die. I was the nurse who had been caring for Hannah at the hospital ever since she was born. Whenever I went to work, I usually got to care for Hannah. I was very close to Hannah's mother. She was a very nice lady. Before I sent Hannah home, I wrapped her in a baby blanket. I put her in the car seat that the parents had brought, and then I placed her little teddy bear next to her. Before they left for home, Hannah vomited a little bit onto the teddy bear. I wiped some of it off. I came home and was off for a few days. One Saturday, I went out to the backyard to water some flower plants. I was shocked when I saw a little teddy bear leaning on the base of one of my flower plants. I didn't know how it got there. It looked exactly like the one that Hannah had. I picked it up and looked at it. There was a little bit of dry vomit on it in the same spot. I knew it was Hannah's teddy bear, but I didn't know how it got there. I came back inside and made a phone call to the unit I work at in the hospital and talked to my supervisor to see if she could give me Hannah's mother's phone number. Once I got it, I called Hannah's mother and told her about the teddy bear. She was crying, and then she told me that they were having Hannah's funeral for just one day and had been looking for that teddy bear. Then her mother suddenly stopped crying and said, "Hannah probably wants you here. You've been taking really good care of her. If you don't mind, can you be here?" I brought the teddy bear with me, and when I got to the funeral, I placed it next to Hannah in the baby coffin. I usually don't believe in ghosts and spirits, but this experience made me feel like there is something beyond what we know. I believe that it was Hannah who made that happen, so I would return her teddy bear to her and be able to say goodbye. Story number 3. There was a patient who went to the hospital because he couldn't breathe. There was a lot of water in his body, but he couldn't urinate because his kidneys had shut down. This is one thing about aging. Our organs start to shut down. To extend his life, they would have to put him on dialysis. After a few dialysis sessions at the hospital, this elderly man refused the treatment. With no other options, the family agreed to bring him back home on hospice. The next morning, I went to see the elderly man at his house. When I arrived, his granddaughter Leah came and opened the door. I told her that I am the hospice nurse. She then invited me in to see her grandpa. It was a Monday, so everyone else had left for school or work. Leah, who had been caring for her grandpa for a while, was the one home. Leah showed me which bedroom her grandpa was in. I walked over to the room and greeted him. He was moaning and having a hard time breathing, but he also greeted me. I put my bag to the side and took some medicine out. I told him that he had a wound on his right foot, and it was going to hurt when I cleanse and change the dressing. Therefore, I was going to give him some pain medicine before I do that. I gave him some pain medication to help him feel less pain and to help him relax and breathe. As I was giving him the pain medicine through his IV line, the elderly man said, "Wife, don't do that to him. He's just here to help me, so please don't do that to him." I got a bit scared because there was no one else but me and him in that room. I started unwrapping the dressing on his right foot. Then he said again, "Wife, you don't know what those are, so don't touch them." As a nurse, I know that sometimes before a patient dies, they see things. As a person of faith, I believe more in the spirit side than in hallucinations. I believe it's a hallucination when they see snakes coming out of the wall or flowers turning into lizards. But when they mention their dead loved ones, I believe it's more about spirits. Once I cleansed his wound, I was ready to wrap it up with a new dressing. Then I looked, and my new roll of dressing and my scissor that I had put on the chair were gone. I started looking around. I had left them on top of the chair on my right. Where did they go? Then I looked to the left and saw the new roll of dressing and scissor there on the carpet under the bed. I'm not sure how they moved from my right to under the bed on my left. I picked them up and looked under the bed, but no one's there. I got a bit scared, but I wrapped up his wound as good as I can. After that, I went back out to the living room and told Leah that if they had any questions or concerns later, they should give us a call. That night, around 3 a.m., the elderly man died. I kind of knew that without dialysis he would die in the next couple of days, but I didn't expect him to go so soon. Story number 4. I work as a nurse on a medical surgical floor. One day, I heard from my parents that one of our grandpas within our clan in a different city was very sick. Before that, Grandpa always went to the casino. When I asked my parents how that grandpa got sick and what his symptoms were, they said he had a really bad infection in his stomach and had been pooping blood. That night, my father told me that the relatives were having a meeting about that grandpa, and they asked me to go since I'm the only one in the clan who works at a hospital. I went with my parents to our clan leader's house. According to what they told me, the grandpa in the hospital had a bacterium causing him to have really bad stomach pain and bloody diarrhea. The doctor wanted to put someone else's feces inside that grandpa. Right when they said this, I knew that the grandpa probably had a bacteria called C. diff. When it's really bad and antibiotics didn't do much, they will put someone else's feces into the grandpa's colon so the good bacteria can outnumber the bad bacteria in order to save him. The clan leaders asked me about it and I told them that it was okay. I was happy. It's not a procedure where they have to cut the grandpa open. Sometimes when medicine doesn't work, they have to do that. The clan already agreed to it. However, once we got to the hospital, the grandpa, who was really sick, refused the procedure because he thought it was too nasty. No matter what I told him, he refused. This was during the time when he could still talk. The grandpa told me that if I wanted the procedure, then I could have it. If I didn't shut my mouth, then if he died, he'd come and make me see it. After that, I kept it to myself. The clan couldn't do anything either. 4 days later, the grandpa died in the hospital. I don't know how a simple procedure that could save his life was something he wouldn't let them do. He wasn't even that old yet. He was only 72 years old. The family doesn't know where he might have gotten the bacteria from because no one else in the family got it. But I think he might have gotten it from the casino because those chips are so dirty. Even your cell phone has C. diff because people like to use their phone while they're on the toilet. The first night of the funeral, I didn't go since I had work and got home at 8 p.m. My parents and siblings were all at the grandpa's funeral. When I came home, there was this awful smell. It kind of smelled like bad gas and something rotting. I didn't know what it was. I checked everywhere, but there was no dead rat or anything. I just couldn't tell where the smell was coming from. I couldn't find the source of the smell, so I went to take a shower. As I was showering, I heard things falling off the walls and breaking. When I got out, I saw that 2 pictures in the hallway of our clan had fallen down and the glass was broken. 2 of those pictures had that grandpa in them. It was so strange. But as a nurse, I'm more into science and medicine, so I didn't think it had anything to do with an unhappy spirit. On the second day of the funeral, I also didn't go. By the way, our funeral is 3 days and nights. On the 3rd day, I was off. That day, my parents told me that since I didn't go the first 2 days, I should go on that last day. But my parents did warn me that the grandpa was beginning to stink already, so if I went, I didn't have to stay all night. I could kind of tell that with a bad infection like that, he would decompose a lot quicker, and those bacteria in his guts would make it smell really bad. That night when I got there, I didn't stay long, and this is the reason. I got there and started talking to my cousins outside. As it got darker, More and more people started showing up and going to the coffin to look at the grandpa. I decided to go look at the grandpa too. When I got closer and closer to the coffin, I recognized the smell. It was the same smell from the other night when I got back from work and the two pictures fell down. I just did a quick look inside the coffin and then came back to sit with my cousins. When my parents came, I stayed with them for a little bit and then came back home. I didn't tell my parents about what happened until 6 months later when things had settled down a little bit. My parents told me that I wasn't trying to hurt the grandpa or anything. I wasn't doing anything wrong to him, just trying to help him understand. But maybe he didn't like how I had made the whole clan try to convince him to do that procedure. That's all for this video. Thank you for making all the way through and supporting my stories. Have a wonderful day for night.